Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to round 9 of the Halfords Formula Alpha Championship 2022. We're here at Mexico this evening. What a fabulous circuit. A personal favourite of mine, actually. Should really test out these RSS Supreme cars to their full potential, obviously, with those massive straight, especially as you head the start-finish straight in particular, being, of course, it just infinitely long, it seems. It is Will Inglis who currently leads this session. A 122.9 sees him go fastest in qualifying with just under 5 minutes to go now as we're on board with John Baker as he heads onto the start-finish straight. So we'll see what type of speeds they're achieving as they head down towards the speed trap now. John Baker currently P3 in the ring. That's actually P5, 126.6. There is 188 miles an hour through the speed trap. Certainly quite a rate of knots. John Baker, of course, progressing to the pros some time ago, doing a very nice job indeed. Currently P6. Apologies if I just said you progressed to the pros, actually, with 111 points on the board. I just want to give mention, though, to Paul Millman, who is currently running P6 overall, 125.8, his previous best. Well, no, rather 120, what's his previous best? 125.8, yes, is his best, rather. He's looking to improve on that, but that puts him P6 overall. He is leading the AM charge by quite a comfortable margin, it must be said, as there has been an incident, I believe, between championship leader Alan Matthews and Paul Brady there. Not sure what went on, but I'm sure neither will be particularly happy because it's not what they need at this stage in qualifying. This, of course, the dying breaths of qualifying. It needs to be every single lap counts for these drivers, so they can't really afford to be making or to be having errors like that. We do notice a lack of game audio in this session. I do apologise for that. We'll try and get that mended as soon as possible. And we will, as I say, hopefully for race on we'll have some nice V6 engines screaming their way through this Mexico circuit as we head into turn 1 with Alan Matthews now. Major braking zone here. The back end just getting a little bit upset as he tries to bounce over the curbs, trying to make as much time as possible, use as much of that track as possible. That might have cost him on this attempt. We'll have to wait and see how it goes for him as he heads down towards turn 4 now. The end of sector 1 already. Apart from the first corner, there isn't really anything to sector 1. It's just all full throttle. In fact, a lot of this circuit is full throttle. Maybe a little bit less in these RSS Supreme cars, but I know in the Formula 1 cars, especially last year's, or the year before's rather, or whenever we last went to Mexico with a lot of downforce on our F1 cars, it was certainly a rather easy feat in terms of just how much you could sit at full throttle around that circuit in those cars. So it'll be interesting to see how these cars fare. Everyone in qualifying using the soft tyre as expected. I don't believe this circuit is particularly high degradation. You have to watch through sector 2. You have to watch your tyre temps a little bit as you head down towards maybe turn 10 or turn 9, turn 10 or turn 11. They're probably starting to scream a little bit, but no major worries there. So as I say, there shouldn't be too high degradation as far as some of the tracks we visit go. One person I do want to watch out for as soon as we can is Barry Clayton. Barry Clayton had an issue on the previous sector 3 on his previous fast lap, but was looking for an absolutely flying lap there. So all went wrong by the looks of things. Hopefully he can recover from that. There is only 1 minute 20 left. Unless, the cars we're seeing heading around now, this will be the final qualifying stint. You can't make it around the circuit in just over a minute as you're setting up for a qualifying run. As we're going to go on board then with Paul Brady for the time being. Where is he currently overall? He's currently P9. With a 128.2, and he's looking relatively comfortable there. He's been kind of P3 in the AM running for a little while now, maybe under pressure slightly from Steve Knight. I imagine it could be a bit of a battle between those two in the dying moments of qualifying. We're going to go on board with, let's go on board with, I haven't quite picked yet, we're going to go on board with Alex Smith if we can. I don't believe we can. Let's see, there's a car near him, but they're so close together, I can't quite make out who that is. I believe that is Steve Knight, who we can't go on board with either, unfortunately. So we'll have to try and catch someone else. So we're going to go on board with Will Inglis. Will Inglis is currently on to try and start his final fast lap attempt here. As Alan Matthews, I just want to watch out for, has just set a purple sector 2. So I'll watch Will Inglis in just a moment. But let's see now, as Alan Matthews jumps on the loud pedal once more on this lap. He comes across the line. Does he improve? He doesn't. He loses out in sector 3 in the end. Oh no, that is in fact his best time. No, what happened there is he's gone faster, but unfortunately it was invalid. He's corner caught or gone past the track limits, and unfortunately for him, that has put an end to his qualifying charge there. He remains P2 for the time being. We're going to go on board with Will Inglis, and he's currently heading into sector 2. It really does tumble by quite quick, this circuit, given just how long it is. And we're heading down towards turn 7 with Will Inglis now. Current provisional pole for him at the moment. He can possibly afford to make a bit of an error. He's got 7 tenths to the cars behind. And I think the next car that can actually even make an attempt is Alex Smith. Did Alex Smith cross the line in time there? I'm not entirely sure if he did. I think he just about missed out, unfortunately for him, so he stays where he is, currently P3 at the moment. Will Inglis, is he on for an improvement? No, he is not. Alex Smith is continuing on, so it may be the case that he did actually just about make it. He just about made it past the checkered flag with enough time to go. 3 cars then out on track. It is Will Inglis who will be coming across the line first then. Can he improve? No, he can't. He stays on provisional pole, of course, but with no improvement there. We're going to go on board with Alan Matthews, as I believe Alex Smith has brought an end to his qualifying charge there. Let's see what Alan Matthews can do then. He does make an improvement through the final sector. He did improve by a tenth of a second as well. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough at this stage in qualifying, so the order stays the same. That is Will Inglis and then Alan Matthews in P2. What a shame for him. Alex Smith in the mix there as well. But that brings an end to this qualifying session here in Mexico for round now. We'll join you in just a few minutes as we get ready for race 1 of this double header. Thank you very much. And welcome to the grid, ladies and gentlemen. We are here on the grid for race 1 at Mexico, round 9 of the Halfords Alfa Championship. We'll just give you a quick rundown with just under 30 seconds to go until lights out. It is Willingless who sits on pole, Alan Matthews P2, then the second row we have Alex Smith, Barry Clayton, third row John Baker, Andrew Brammer. The fourth row we have the Ambrose of Paul Millman and Rob Whitney. Expect a good battle between those two. Then we have Steve Knight and Paul Brady rounding out the field. Guy Swarbrick as well, in fact. Just want to give a mention to it as well in the mix there. As we have 6 red lights on the gantry. Somebody already on the push-to-pass system there. And a very speedy getaway indeed for Alan Matthews there as he spins up the rear wheels. But it certainly gets him a good getaway. Look at how many car lengths he's already gained on his competition. As we run down towards the first corner, then we're going to try and go on board with the front runners. It is Alan Matthews who still leads, has a very good line there. Has he gone a little bit too deep into the corner? No, he's absolutely nailed it for now. Trading places further down the order, then we have Andrew Brammer and Rob Whitney. Barry Clayton and Alex Smith battling it out here. They're near enough side by side. They're very lucky they didn't make contact with each other, but they carry on. As we see they're late on the brakes, Alex Smith tries to get a move done, but it's just a little bit too far back. John Baker, meanwhile, is slipping through the order somewhat after a good start for him. And then up the inside there we see Alex Smith, fantastic move from him up into P4 then. Meanwhile, Willingless about a second down on his competition. Alan Matthews, our championship leader for the time being. It is between these two really, the championship fight, although we have to involve Alex Smith in that too. He's currently P4 in the running. It's about 30 points separating the front runners and him. And there's been an issue with Rob Whitney. Rob Whitney has dropped down the order. I believe there's contact between him and Andrew Brammer there, and they've both lost out as a result of that. But speaking of losing out, Alan Matthews has lost about half a second as we head through sector 2 there. Willingless catching up rather nicely indeed. Has he looked after his tyres a little bit better? Whatever's happened there, does he have to serve a penalty? I'm not entirely sure. He may have got a jump on the start actually, but Alan Matthews has to dive into the pits for whatever reason, and that is a shame. That's rather putting into his charge in this race, but it is music, I'm sure, to Willingless's, because Willingless, with a deficit of 37 points in this championship, has basically just been gifted, if all things go well for him in this race, 25 points to try and close up that gap to his nearest rival, Alan Matthews. And as I was saying then, him and Alex Smith are only 1 or 2 unfortunate events for Alan Matthews away to all of a sudden be right back in to this championship fight, and it certainly seems to have been the case so far already. As we look further down the order then, there's a battle going on between Rob Whitney and Alan Matthews as Alan Matthews tries to climb his way back through the order, but Rob Whitney, I'm sure, is far more focused on his battle with Andrew Brammer, and unfortunately maybe too late on the brakes, or the car just didn't want to stop, didn't want to derate there for whatever reason. There's contact between Rob Whitney and Andrew Brammer. And Andrew Brammer, Rob Whitney swapping places there. What a shame. Sometimes accidents like that just can't be helped. I think that'll be considered a bit of a racing incident. As we see Alan Matthews, that has really benefited him. He's back up to P7 already now, and now he can start setting in the quick lap, start setting those purple sectors and try and catch back up to his rivals in the championship. Meanwhile, Alan Matthews has got past John Baker there. I'm not sure if he was having a couple of difficulties with the car, because Barry Clayton's now looking to try and get the overtake done. This is, of course, will be a fight for the podium position, so very important indeed for these drivers. Alex Smith then in P2. So the championship battles are manifesting themselves in the racing here as well, which is very exciting indeed. As we're on board with Alex Smith at the moment, I think he was actually considered out of track limit on every single sector in the previous lap there. So he's clearly using his goodwill with the stewards, if you will, to taking advantage of it rather as much as possible to try and catch back up to Willingless. Willingless, I should mention, is just busy setting purple sector after purple sector. He's looking very cool, calm and collected indeed. He's so composed and it's just really settled in now, and is looking for a bit of a good race going on, I expect. As there's been once again another issue between Andrew Brammer and Rob Whitney. What a shame. I'm not sure these two will be particularly happy with each other after the end of this race. Rob Whitney actually retiring as a result of these issues as well. What a shame. Hopefully race 2 will go a little bit better. As we see Andrew Brammer currently in P8 at the moment. He hasn't lost position, he has lost time though, and will now be potentially battling with Paul Brady, because of course this spinning out is going to hurt your tyres big time, as well as knock your confidence potentially as well. That is something that you have to consider But meanwhile, Alan Matthews actually is setting purple sectors, trying to take them away from Will Inglis. He is, of course, in the fight for that fastest lap. He'll be wanting to set those if he has any hope of catching back up to the top point scorers there. As I believe Guy Swarbrick having a couple of issues as well. Unfortunately, he's having to disconnect at this stage in the race as well. What a shame. So early on in the race, it's going a little bit wrong for some drivers. As we're on board now with John Baker, wouldn't necessarily say it's going wrong for him. He's just about to be enjoying a battle he'd probably rather not be at this point in time, because it seems to be that Barry Clayton is looking very happy indeed. His car really settling into this race. 126.5 on that previous lap. That's his best lap so far in this race. John Baker did respond with his previous lap being his best lap as well, but that's a 126.6 unfortunately for him. And I should mention, while this is going on, Will Inglis casually setting 124.0s. So he's about 2.5 seconds faster at this stage in the race. Of course, 20 minutes in the race. The tyres haven't necessarily lost their edge, but rather we're 5 minutes into this race. Tyres haven't necessarily lost their edge, but the fuel load is also very heavy as well. So this isn't particularly the fastest stage of the race for these cars. It will only be as we head into the later stages with about 5 to 10 minutes to go that we really see the full potential of the cars, as Will Inglis has already shown potentially the full potential of these cars with a 123.4. I'm actually going to go back and check qualifying and see what the pole lap was, because I have a feeling it was there or thereabouts 123, if not a little bit off that. That is an absolutely fantastic time from Will Inglis there. What else is going on throughout the field then? Paul Millman is doing a fantastic job of leading the AM race at the moment. We really have to give mention to this. He's currently 15 seconds off the lead and is 7 seconds ahead of P2 in the AM running. Steve Knight also doing a brilliant job there. In fact, everyone, we're within 30 seconds of each other. The race is spread out by 30 seconds, the field is spread out rather, and we've still only got 18 minutes to go in this race. It has been a fantastic effort from all so far. As we go back on board with Barry Clayton, his charge against John Baker potentially not going the way we may have expected. He's still in P4 at the moment. This track potentially not the easiest to overtake on. I'd say it's kind of middling really. It is a more modern F1 circuit, and say what you will about them. There's plenty of debate that goes on about the overtaking, kind of the ease of overtaking at these circuits. I don't think it's the worst, particularly with the likes of push to pass aiding things along there, as Paul Brady currently 2 seconds off Andrew Brammer. Looks to be getting closer at some point. Maybe differences in their setup, which we'll have a look at in just a moment to see what could be causing that. If he's maybe catching up in some parts of the circuit and losing out in others, potentially a bit of understeer creeping in, as Will Inglis sets a 123.3 on that previous lap there. So he really is showing no signs of stopping in this race. And we can tell you that Will Inglis's best time in qualifying was a 123.2. That was 1.6 seconds faster than anyone else. 120. No, rather that was his average lap. His best lap was 122.9. So he is very close indeed to his pole lap with 17 minutes to go in this race. He's beaten Alan Matthews' pole lap at 123.5. So as it stands at the moment, if Will Inglis had put that lap in with a race load's worth of fuel on board, he would have still sat on provisional pole. That is a fantastic effort from Will Inglis. Or rather, he wouldn't have sat on provisional pole. He would have been on pole, if you will. As we go on board with John Baker, Barry Clayton, is this the lap that the inevitable move is possibly about to happen? We'll have to stay tuned to find out, ladies and gentlemen, as I'd like to give mention, actually, just briefly, if we can. Sorry, we are switching around between a few cars at this point in time, but I'd like to give mention to Alex Smith. Alex Smith's been driving a very good race so far. He is currently 9 seconds off the lead of the race, currently in the low to mid 125s, and is just having a rather enjoyable race, I'd say. Someone who might not be at this point is John Baker, as we see trying to go late on the brakes around the outside. Barry Clayton trying to get that move done into turn 13, a very brave place to try and get that move done without just spearing off towards the grandstand there, the kind of middle plaza of the circuit, if you will. But he looks to be in good stead here. He's got a good exit out of turn 17 on that previous lap, using that push to pass system. Is now side by side. Is he going to go late on the brakes and take the inside line into turn 1? Fantastic move from Barry Clayton. Has he gone too deep? No, he's got the inside for turn 2 and turn 3 there as well, but he's certainly under pressure as he tries to give John Baker a wide berth, and they're still side by side then. This battle is going to continue on into sector 2 now then. They are neck and neck. He's going to have the inside once again, but but he's late on the brakes early on the brakes this time rather, doesn't want to go too wide into the corner, and that has allowed John Baker to go a little bit braver and take that position back. Let's see what he can do now as we head down towards turn 7. A good exit, if you will, is very important indeed, because you carry that momentum all the way down to turn 13 through this sector, and you want to absolutely nail the lines here without being too cheeky with the track limits, and I think Barry Clayton has just about achieved that there as the back end slides across the circuit ever so slightly. That will raise his tyre temperatures, reduce his grip. That's not what he wants at this stage in the race, and he has, as a result, backed off from John Baker just a little bit. Just goes to show the amount of force, the amount of effort the tyres are having to withhold, the amount of challenges they are being asked of by the driver, but he's absolutely nailed turn 16, has John Baker. There's contact between the two there as they bang wheels and lose time as a result. Look, there is Alan Matthews, the man who had dropped down all the way to pretty much last, is now all of a sudden within a shout of the podium here as he catches up to the battling cars in front of him, heading down to turn 1 now then, side by side, John Baker and Barry Clayton. Let's go on board with them. This time around, it's a bit of a switch up. We have John Baker, who has the inside line there. Has he cut the corner a little bit too much there? Whatever reason, he's conceded that corner to Barry Clayton. There's contact between them there, as I believe Barry Clayton went off, lost a bit of momentum. John Baker wasn't expecting that, and has now had contact, so that will bring a bit of damage to his front wing, rather. Barry Clayton has damage to his rear wing as well. There nearly was contact once again. In all of this, Alan Matthews and Paul Millman have caught up. John Baker then allowing Barry Clayton to have the position, I think. No, he's not. He's potentially duping him. Is he what's going on here? No, I think that was a bit of a dupe by John Baker to maybe lure Barry Clayton into a false sense of security, try him luring into an overtake. That wasn't going to work, and it certainly didn't, because look, Barry Clayton now all the way down in P5. It's now going to be Alan Matthews that John Baker tries to battle it out with. This has really played into Alan Matthews' hands all of a sudden. He's side by side with John Baker, has the upper hand as we head into turn 12. They make contact. He goes wide, loses that position once again. No, he's not. He's caught it right back as we head into turn 13. This is a fantastic battle going on, pretty much a 4-car battle for P3 here. What a fantastic effort from all these drivers involved as we go onto the loud pedal once again. John Baker going a little bit wide though. He has to concede the position to Alan Matthews for a second time on this lap. He's going to lose it to Barry Clayton potentially. Of course, he loses momentum with that contact with the wall there, and there is Barry Clayton before the braking zone into turn 1, getting the overtake done on John Baker. So now Barry Clayton P4, Alan Matthews P3, John Baker P5, and Paul Millman P6 there. Paul Millman, don't count him out. He is pretty much sat on the sidelines. At any point, he could just allow the cars up in front to get entangled in a battle, slow themselves down, and swoop past for a chance at that podium. What a fantastic effort that would be. It wouldn't be his first, I believe. Certainly not the first AMP podium we've had this season. As we now watch them heading down towards Sector 2, it's very difficult to work out where they are on the radar, because they're oh so close to each other that you can't see whose name is who as we head down towards turn 7 now. It is Alan Matthews who has a couple of car lengths on Barry Clayton for that all-important P3. Then he's 14 seconds off Alex Smith. Are we now going to see his true potential be unleashed as he breaks away from this pack? I think that could be what we're seeing. He's got about a second on the cars behind already. This will be a very telling lap, this one. This will go to show just how much he can catch up to Alex Smith. That car in P2 at the moment. We're only at halfway stage in this race, so with 26 seconds off the lead, we'll have to do some maths. I don't know if he'll catch up to P1, but he can certainly get into P2 as he uses that push-to-pass system then down the start-finish straight. Barry Clayton elects to not do that, as there's now a bit of a gap forming between those two, and there's a bit of a gap forming between Barry Clayton and John Baker. So as we look at the lap times, Alan Matthews a 1:23.7 on that previous lap. That last lap for Alex Smith a 1:24.7. That is a fantastic effort from Alan Matthews, and it goes to show that in about 13 laps time we could see a battle going on between those two. However, we're only 10 laps in at the halfway stage, so I don't think the battle on pace as it stands at the moment is going to build up between Alan Matthews and Alex Smith. Don't count out some type of weird external events or any weird externalities that can play into Alan Matthews' hands. Anything could happen at this stage in the race. As the back end for Alan Matthews actually steps out, heading into turn 7. That's not what he wants here in Sector 2. He loses all that momentum that he's trying to carry through these long S's, and lose a little bit of time to Barry Clayton. As a result, there's now about 0.6 of a second between them. In fact, no, it's built up rather substantially. Then my maths was just entirely wrong. 1.4 seconds between Alan Matthews and Barry Clayton, which is a little bit more manageable for him. Barry Clayton, Alan Matthews certainly managing the gap between John Baker and Paul Milman. Has John Baker in his efforts to keep Barry Clayton at bay potentially overwork the car a little bit, because if we look on the previous lap, in fact we'll wait until we come across this line now. Let's see the difference between Paul Milman and John Baker. On that previous lap, they were neck and neck. Paul Milman, the AM driver, pretty much level pegging with John Baker there. So he's got his work out for him, has John Baker. He's lost out 2 positions in the previous few laps battling, and he will be hoping to probably stay where he is. He's still on for a good points haul at this stage in the race. In fact, he can lose a position to Paul Milman even, and would still be on for a good points haul. He'd have to go all the way down to Andrew Rammer, about 20 seconds behind, to be at risk of losing any more points. So it's a good showing actually from the AM running. That's what it goes to show. It's a lock-up for Alan Matthews there, and something's happened between Barry Clayton and John Baker. I'm not sure. I believe Barry Clayton must have gone off. There's about 4 tenths between him and John Baker now, and that's not what I expected at this stage in the race. That gap was building up rather nicely for Barry Clayton. Potentially one small error, the car not responding as he would expect. Maybe he's overworked the car just like John Baker could have. These drivers, in the efforts to get the exciting overtakes done on each other, have possibly worn the tyres out a little bit prematurely. Everyone is running the soft compound tyre. And I should mention actually, we don't actually have a best lap for Alex Smith, because I think he's running wide through every single... something is going on with Barry Clayton's car there. Some type of issue with the pedals potentially, or maybe the tyres really crying for mercy. Whatever reason, that is not looking like a very raceable car at this stage in the race. That promoter Paul Milman in the AM running 2 P5 on the road. Fantastic effort from him, as Barry Clayton wants that position back by the looks of things. And I'm not surprised he wants a bit of a battle with John Baker, as we see. Barry Clayton's car not looking entirely raceable there, so hopefully he is able to carry on with no major issues. But as I was saying, this is a really good showing from the AM running. In fact, they are well and truly embedded within the mid-pack. And yeah, Alex Smith not quite posting a legal lap yet by the looks of things. I'm not sure how the stewards will look at that one. He's absolutely flying, it must be said. His last lap of 124.5. He's certainly turned up the pace in comparison to Alan Matthews. He hasn't quite got to the level of Willing List yet, but is doing his best to keep him at bay. Of course, 15 seconds is not an insurmountable gapping if anything goes wrong up front. Hopefully it doesn't for Willing List's sake. It will certainly drag the championship on a little bit longer. But yes, Alex Smith will be hoping, I'm sure, to try and get a more legal lap in at some point. Is this lap that he does it on? No, it's a... Once again, I think he's gone wide on a few corners, or it's the timing system having a bit of a glitch, and he has actually been perfectly legal, in which case I do apologise, Alex Smith. You've been driving very nicely indeed, just the game doesn't appear to think so. As we go on board with Paul Milman, he's got the overtake on Barry Clayton once again. There's something going on with Barry's car. I think it could be. What a shame. Hopefully he can nurse it back in the remaining 7 minutes in this race. Remember when I said 5 to 10 minutes, the cars will start to turn up the pace? Willing List has just gone for a purple sector, so I think at this stage we'll sit down and enjoy a bit of a fast lap with Willing List then. Heading through Sector 2, Willing List losing a little bit of time there, actually. Not his personal best or session best, so let's see how he does through the relatively short Sector 3 now. Then on the allowed pedal, on that push to pass, and it is enough in Sector 1. Sector 1 was enough of improvement that he goes a 1:23.1. What a fantastic lap time from him, and that would have beaten his qualifying effort, actually. So clearly still familiarising himself with the circuit as the race goes on, which is good to see. Let's see actually as he heads through Sector 1 once again. Can he improve even more? As we watch him do that, we keep a wary eye on Paul Milman and Barry Clayton. They're enjoying a bit of a battle at the moment. As Barry Clayton, let's watch how his car behaves actually heading through this sector. Are we going to see any kind of untoward lockups or anything like that? No, we don't. The back end steps out though, so that could be what we are experiencing on Barry Clayton's car. He does of course have a lack of aero owing to a bit of damage. And there he goes for the overtake side by side there, giving him a bit of a wide berth actually as he heads towards the inside for turn 1. That overtake looks to be pretty much secured before the braking zone, and it is indeed, so he just has to nurse that car home and hopefully nothing goes too wrong for him as he cuts there to try and make it around the corner, I think. I don't think he gained too much of an advantage from that. But speaking of advantage, it's Alan Matthews who has the point advantage in the championship standings at the moment. We'll give you a brief championship update as hopefully my game hasn't just crashed. Something went wrong with my graphics card there, but we're all back and good to carry on. As Alan Matthews currently has 230 points leading the championship. Will Inglis with a 122.9. There wasn't actually a personal best in any of that. It was just a very well strung together lap. A 122.9 to Will Inglis, the first car into the 22s. I know, of course, his qualifying effort wasn't. Ignore what I said about him beating his qualifying effort. He's in the 22s in the race anyway. As we were, it's Alan Matthews in P1 in Championship, 230 points. It's then Will Inglis, who's currently flying around at the moment. He's been a bit of a Mexico superstar, it must be said. 193 points. 4 points behind him in P3 is Alex Smith, currently behind him in the race. And then we have Barry Clayton, P4, 178 points. George Brooke Battersby, 120 points. John Baker, currently P4 in the race, being hunted down by Barry Clayton, however, 111 points. Then we have Andrew Brammer in P7 on 101 points. Then we have James Atkins, 96. Andrew Harvey, 72. Matt Daly, 68. Colin Kneef, 43. And Andrew Whitehead, 14. Then we go to the AM running. We have Rob Whitney currently leading the AM Championship by a fairly comfortable margin. Of course, that will shrink as we head into race 2, 277 points. Then we have Paul Brady in P2. He's done a fantastic job in this season so far. It must be said, 195 points to his name. Then we have Paul Millman doing a fantastic job not only this season but also this race. With 190 points, he'll be hunting Paul Brady down. In fact, we'll be taking the AM lead from Paul Brady as we watch Will Inglis post a 122.7, a fantastic effort from him. Then we have Guy Swarbrick, who I imagine is treating this as a bit of a practice session for race 2, coming up the reverse grid race. Just a few moments, that'll be exciting as drivers are giving opportunities that they may have otherwise not had in race 1. He's on 170 points, so very close in the AM running as things stand. Then we have Steve Knight on 87 points, currently running in P7, about 12 seconds behind Paul Millman. As Alan Matthews has really turned up the ante, it must be said. He's in fact got past John Baker. Apologies, we missed that, I believe. I know it's Barry Clayton currently batting out with John Baker. We'll see how try it again. We'll see how he fares in just a moment as we head down the start-finish straight, but it's looking rather comfortable for Barry Clayton as he's gaining down that start-finish straight. He has the advantage of the slipstream, hasn't used the push-to-pass system yet, but I don't think he will. I think he's going to wait until the straight on the exit of turn 3 to think about getting his move done as his brake disc glow orange, dealing with all of that heat. Back end getting away from him ever so slightly. That will not help his Matt. Something's going on with Barry Clayton's car. I'm not entirely sure what it is. He's just had a 4-wheel lockup and all that momentum that he had. He looked so ready to get the move done on John Baker. It's all been undone as Paul Millman overtakes him once again. But Will Inglis currently in P1 as things stand. We haven't watched him too much in this race at all, really. Alex Smith currently in P2 being hunted down by Alan Matthews as Alex Smith still hasn't posted a clean lap. According to the timing system, Alan Matthews a 123.1 on that previous lap, so he's trying to get as close as he can to Will Inglis. However, Will Inglis in the 123.3 range, that was illegal. However, so his best lap is his best lap a 122.7. So that is a flying lap for him. Then we have Alan Matthews on as I said, on the 123.1s at the moment, and then there's a fairly decent gap in terms of pace to the rest of the field. So some drivers absolutely nailing this Mexico circuit as things stand. As we see Barry Clayton actually getting back past Paul Millman once again, but I think Paul Millman could be fighting it here. Oh no, Barry Clayton using that push-to-pass system, so he pretty much seals this move for another lap. I'm going to go on board in just a moment with Will Inglis as we're heading towards the final couple of laps of this race. Now I should give mention to Alan Matthews, who's just posted a personal best Sector 1, in fact the fastest Sector 1 we've seen for quite some time, I think, a 30.6 through that first stage of the lap there. As where is Will Inglis at the moment? Will Inglis is coming up on the next lap here. He won't be able to complete the lap within the 1 minute 6 left on the timer, so this will be his this is now the penultimate lap of this race, rather, as Alan Matthews heads down towards the end of Sector 2, and he does lose out through Sector 2, but I think this will still be a fairly racy lap indeed at this stage, as I should give mention to Steve Knight, who's currently under pressure from Andrew Bremer in just a moment. Andrew Bremer's taking some good points away from this race, much needed, I think. It could have been worse for him. It certainly didn't start the way that he would have wanted, I am sure. As we're on board with Alan Matthews, he comes across the line there, a 1:24.6, so by no means his fastest, but still a good lap regardless. As I believe Barry Clayton and Paul Millman still battling it out just a little bit here, as we are watching where Will Inglis is at the moment in this lap. He's currently in Sector 2. Of course, Sector 1 absolutely flies by on this, like it is. I mean, it's a long Sector 1, but it's a very quick Sector 1 as well. As Paul Millman actually into the 125s for the first time in this race, so the car's getting more and more speedy as the fuel load gets lighter, which of course we do see sometimes. In fact, we see a lot of the time in these cars. Stingray has to enter the pits, unfortunately. Not sure if that was due to lack of fuel or if that was a penalty that he had to serve. For whatever reason, he has had to dive into the pits, and that rather puts a bit of an end to his race. Now we go on board with Will Inglis for the final lap in this race. He has absolutely controlled what has been a relatively exciting Mexico Grand Prix. Well, not Grand Prix, rather, a Mexico race here. We'll tell you what, we'll call it the Grand Prix. As Barry Clayton, I believe, has had a bit of an impact. Where was that? That was on the braking zone through Turn 4 and Turn 5. What a shame for him. He takes out more of his front wing, and I'm sure he's just limping this car home at this point. Doesn't lose out to the fact that he's been overtaken by Paul Millman, but will be, I'm sure, now quite weary of the fact that Andrew Brown's only a few seconds behind, so anything could happen yet as we go on board with Will Inglis. He's heading through Turn 6 at the moment. There's so many on the circuit, apart from Sector 2, there's so many corners which really do stress out those rear tyres, and I think that's why a few cars have been a little bit rear limited, because you go from relatively low speeds to stomping on that throttle pedal to try and catch up, to try and gain as much speed as possible. And that really does stress out the rear tyres, especially on a hot circuit. We have 37-degree tarmac temperatures here as we watch Will Inglis head into Sector 3 for the final time in Race 1. He has done a fantastic job, has led pretty much every lap, and led it by a fairly comfortable margin as well. And must be said, some fantastic pace on point. He has looked so calm, so comfortable, and I am sure this is ready for Race 2 coming up in just a few moments. Congratulations, Will Inglis, for a fantastic and well-deserved Race 1 win. As we go on board with Alex Smith, and he's certainly under pressure from Alan Matthews towards the end, but unfortunately no one could quite touch him in the end. This will be a very good race for his championship charge as he heads through the final sector here in Mexico for the end of Race 1. Using that push-to-pass system is Alex Smith, who will be coming home P2, and a good haul of points there. Congratulations, Alex, once again on the very well-executed race. And Alan Matthews there, rounding out the podium after being pretty much eliminated towards the back of the field. A fantastic drive from him to claw his way back through the field. A well-deserved podium for Alan Matthews there. As we go on board with John Baker, quietly had a very good race in the end. Enjoyed some battling halfway through, but is able to come home P4. A podium certainly on the cards for him. Unfortunately, wasn't to be in this race. Let's hope in the next race, potentially for his sake, he can be challenging for it once again. A fantastic effort from him. And then we have Paul Millman rounding out, or rather taking the AM race victory. Congratulations, Paul. A fantastic drive from him. Really in the mix with the pro runners this time round. A thoroughly deserved victory for Paul Millman. As Barry Clayton comes in P6 on the road, Andrew Bremer P7 on the road, P6 in the pro running, Paul Brady P8 on the road, Steve Knight will be coming out P9 on the road, and then we have Guy Strawberry classified P10. That was a very exciting race 1 here at Mexico. Don't go anywhere, because in just a few moments we have the reverse grid race to round out the weekend. So hopefully see you in just a few minutes. And welcome back to the action, ladies and gentlemen. Apologies, but a couple of technical issues meant that we unfortunately missed the start of race 2. I can tell you though, it was a little bit of carnage as we headed down towards turn 1. That has meant that Alan Matthews currently leads this race under pressure from Willing List. The battle that could have been in race 1 is certainly ongoing here in race 2. They've built up a comfortable gap, in fact, as they've been able to get ahead of the rest of the field. The order might be changing about just a little bit as it catches up with what is going on in the race. I can tell you that is Steve Knight under pressure there from Paul Millman. Paul Millman, a fantastic move from him. It's Paul Brady who currently leads the AM Charger. No, it's not. It's Guy Swarbrick, which is a much better start to race 1 for him, or race 2 for him, rather than race 1, as we see Alex Smith and Andrew Brammer battling out. A better start for Andrew Brammer as well, as we see. Hopefully not having a couple of camera issues, I believe, potentially. As I can tell you that the gap between Alan Matthews and Willing List is about 0.4 of a second. They've got about 6 seconds then down to Alex Smith, and there's about 1/10 of a second between him and Andrew Brammer, because you can see him there heading into turn 2. He had the inside line there, but I think Alex Smith was able to box him off. Yes, he was. Fantastic effort from Alex there to defend, as we see. It is now next. Hopefully we can get this camera sorted. As we see, I'm just trying to work out what I can see through the halo there. John Baker is enjoying a bit of a battle here. Now he's under pressure from Rob Whitney. Rob Whitney doing a very nice job there in P6. Apologies, I said it was Guy Swarbrick leading the AM running. I can tell you it's Rob Whitney leading the AM running at the moment. Apologies, Rob, there as we head down through sector 2 now, and we're on board with Alan Matthews, and Alan Matthews with about half a second is leading this race, but is certainly under pressure. The back end looking a little bit more comfortable than what we saw towards the end of race 1 for some cars, because of course the tyres are fresh, have got nice amounts of life in them, as Willing List does in fact make gains through that previous lap. There's something gone wrong on Rob Whitney's car, I think, unfortunately for him, a weekend to forget, as he's gone off at sector 3. Not quite sure what caused that, or if there was a cause, but he has dropped through the order into P10. Apologies, Rob, commentator's curse there, my bad. As we go on board I was about to go on board with Barry Clayton, but he has to pit. Is he pitting for a particular reason? I think he's struggling to find his box by the look of things. Now he's either forgotten to fuel it up, or he's serving a penalty for whatever reason. That's rather taking the momentum out of his race, rather taking the wind out of his sails, I am sure, it was Rob Whitney. I think the tyre temperature affected by that incident on the previous lap. See the back end getting away from him there as he headed through the first corners of the lap. John Baker, meanwhile, having got past Andrew Brammer, is now up into P4. He is running a good race at the moment, as is Guy Swarbrick now leading the AM running. There's massive contact between Andrew Brammer and John Baker there. I think just a little bit too late on the brakes. Couldn't quite get the car slowed down in time, and unfortunately for him, not the way that he would have wanted to rejoin, I am sure. Steve Knight taken out in all of that. His rear wing absolutely demolished, as is Andrew Brammer's front wing in that incident. It's not the type of thing we like to see. Unfortunately, mistakes happen. Of course, as we see Guy Swarbrick, Paul Millman battling it out at the moment. Paul Millman currently leading, running in P5 then on the road, obviously owing to what's just happened at the top end of the running, and is looking relatively comfortable to do so, I would say, because we compare the previous lap pace of 126.8 in the last lap compared to Guy Swarbrick's 1 minute 28. Tell you what though, if we look at the front end of the field, it's rather a bit of a travesty to not look at this, because they've spent the past couple of laps now within half a second of each other. It is still Alan Matthews who leads. Willing List wants that lead of the race back, and if the previous race pace was anything to go by, he is looking quite eager to take it. Although, don't count Alan Matthews out, of course. Alan Matthews was showing some very good pace towards the end of that previous race, has hopefully got less damage on him in race 2 compared to race 1. And has the benefit of responding to the guy behind, responding to that charge. He's being pushed by the car, trying to get the overtake done on him, and that will spur him on a little bit. Will, of course, slow Willing List down as well, so this could play into his hands. It's all to do with how he negotiates this race and make sure he doesn't crack under pressure. That'll make all the difference for him as we head through sector 3 now. Barry Clayton, meanwhile, looking in a little bit of no man's land, unfortunately for him. He's got about 30 seconds to the car in front. As we see both drivers there doing their best to set the fastest lap for about 400th of a second. Alan Matthews held the fastest lap of this race before it was taken by Willing List. both posting very similar times, it must be said. Alan Matthews moves on the braking. Willing Bliss responds there. Has to dive onto the grass. That could have been a very unfortunate incident if the reaction times weren't impeccable there. So congratulations, Will, for avoiding that one. I don't think it was Alan Matthews' fault in particular. I'm not sure if he had a lock-up, but for whatever reason that he had to move that car there. And yeah, as I say, well dodged by Will Inglis. And we got on board with Paul Brady then under pressure from Andrew Brammer, but more so, I'd say, putting pressure on Rob Whitney. Rob Whitney has been able to get back up into 7th, so good recovery from him so far in this race, must be said. The back end getting away from him as we head through turn 2, maybe something to do in his setup, not quite liking the slower corners on this circuit. He's going to have to work out for him to keep Paul Brady behind if he's wearing out his tyres doing that. Meanwhile, speaking of wearing out his tyres, Will Inglis is probably wearing out his tyres, doing his best to keep up with Alan Matthews. Alan Matthews really putting on a good defensive drive here, it must be said, as we head through Sector 3 once again with these two. This battle looks like it could go on for quite some time, and I hope it does as well. It's been very enjoyable so far as Will Inglis jumps onto that push-to-pass system. So does Alan Matthews, responding to that charge from behind. They're pretty much in stalemate at the moment. We go on board with Rob Whitney once again under pressure from Paul Brady. Paul Brady knows this one matters. This matters, of course, because it's the fight for the podium in the AM running. We are watching the battle for P3 in the AM running as we head through Sector 3, and it is Rob Whitney who is on the defensive for now. Very good defensive drive from him. It must be said, he's forcing, well, not errors as such, but he's forcing Paul Brady to take lines that he wouldn't otherwise want to take, because he's losing time as he goes a little bit deep into corners, as he tries to go around the outside. That costs you big time, and it all adds up, and it's certainly allowing Rob Whitney to stay up in front. So Paul Brady might want to try and just potentially stay back, try and save the tyres even towards the end of the race, and maybe force an error from the car in front. That might be his better option, of course, but not that I know what I'm talking about. You wouldn't want to put me in one of these cars, I am sure, and these guys are racing drivers, so they'd much rather go for the overtake then and there, which is what we'd like to see, of course. As we go on board with Will Inglis once again, would you believe it, they are half a second apart, as they were in the previous lap, and the lap before that, and the lap before that, I was going to say probably the lap before that, but that is, of course, the first lap. We are 5 laps into this race. Will Inglis sets the fastest lap of the race so far, a 1:23.4. A very competitive time indeed. We've got 16 minutes to go, and that car is looking very racy already. Of course, it looked racy throughout the entire thing, but it's just looking even faster now as the fuel load begins to get lighter. Heading towards turn 1 then, and second between these two cars. The gap now closing down to about half a second, in fact, as he's now in the slipstream. Could this be the one? Can he go particularly late on the brakes? I don't think so from this far back, because Alan Matthews, his car, was starting to just about claw it back into momentum-wise, rather, if you will. In fact, it was just starting on the top end there to look a little bit stronger, and was able to keep Will Inglis about half a second behind. As we go on board with Andrew Brammer then, and he's a little bit further back than he was on the previous laps, because I think Paul Brady and Rob Whitney rather are spurring each other on, are enjoying a bit of a battle here, side by side, as they head down towards turn 1. Paul Brady earlier on the brakes than Rob Whitney, and that might be the types of places where Rob Whitney is gaining that little bit extra time. Rob Whitney going just a little bit bolder into some corners, and he's being able to keep Paul Brady at bay, although it certainly hasn't been an easy one. I'm sure they will give each other a virtual handshake after this and say well done for a cracking battle, because it looks from here very enjoyable indeed. It looks to be that they are having great fun out there, as we see now Paul Brady taking the tighter line through turn 6. He's been doing his utmost to keep Rob Whitney in check here, as we see Rob Whitney now heading through Sector 2, riding over the curbs a little bit as he tries to carry as much speed as possible. Paul Brady looking very speedy indeed through, where are we? We are at turn, I will tell you in just a moment, we are at a turn through Sector 2. I can tell you we are heading through turn 10, and Paul Brady looked like if he'd gone through it just a couple more miles an hour there, he would have been flying off the circuit, but very well held by Paul Brady. Meanwhile, there's a battle going on at the front end of the field. Unfortunately, we missed the overtake for the lead of this race. Now about half a second sit between Will Inglis and Alan Matthews as things stand. It we wondered if it would have been inevitable, just owing to Will Inglis's raw pace in race 1, and it seems to have been finally Alan Matthews potentially cracking under the pressure, or just couldn't keep Will Inglis at bay for any longer. On that previous lap, they both boasted 124.1s, but Will Inglis's best lap, of course, just that little bit faster in comparison to Alan Matthews. Still, let's see what Alan Matthews can do as we head down towards Sector 3 and get ready to start another race. Another lap. And it is Will Inglis who has the upper hand here. The gap standing at about half a second, so it's still a half a second gap. Just it's flipped compared to the previous lap, and there is the reason for Will Inglis's gains in this race. A 123.4 in comparison to a 124.5 for Alan Matthews. Then he's still very much keeping him at bay, is Alan Matthews, so don't count him out just yet. Look at him setting that car up on the curb there, and there's contact between the two leaders there. What a shame, what a disaster. No one was expecting that after they'd after they'd enjoyed a battle for so long. I think that was very much a racing instant. They were going in at such a rate of knots, so close to each other. I think eventually some form of contact was inevitable. And owing to the high-speed nature of this circuit, whenever there's contact, there's going to be a fairly substantial incident as a result. So it's good to see those two carrying on as if nothing had happened. However, this is exactly what Alex Smith wants to see. Alex Smith, quietly in this race, has been plodding along in P3. He's been doing a fantastic job and is currently on for, once again, another fantastic points finish. Not as many as he would want. He wants to try and claw back towards Will Inglis in the championship, try and close up that gap. But he's now only 2.5 seconds off the lead of this race. If these guys have another instant like that, certainly can't rule it out. We're only halfway into the race so far. He could be very much within a shout of leading this race, and that would be exactly what he needs in this championship. I'm sure that would do him wonders. I'm sure he'd very much enjoy that, as all of these races would. As we see it, was that the rear disc glowing orange hot? I don't think it was. I think that was just my very poor eyes. Well, my eyesight isn't very poor, but I'm not known to be the most intelligent creature at sometimes. But there was a break getting hot regardless, as we see Alan Matthews using that push to pass system. Then there you can see the slowdown though. You enjoyed that 131 for both drivers. The gap standing at about 0.8 of a second. I'm sure they're going to do their best to not repeat that into turn 1. Once again, they are a little bit further apart, of course. Meanwhile, I should give mention to Rob Whitney. Rob Whitney has kept Paul Brady at bay for now. We may see a later charge deeper into the race. However, Paul Milman currently leading the AM running. Once again, a fantastic effort from him. I think it was sort of inevitable given what we saw in race 1. He did a fantastic job of really controlling the AM race, and we're seeing that in race 2 once again. This will allow him to close up in the championship standings. Speaking of the championship standings, we'll give you a brief update on them now. I can tell you that in the lead of the pro running, rather, it is Alan Matthews on 245 points. His lead shrinking slightly to Will Inglis, who's now on 218 points after a fantastic race 1, and he could be on for a repeat of that in race 2. Then we have Alex Smith, currently P3 in the race, P3 in the standings, as has been an overtake. Rob Whitney getting past Andrew Brammer. I think Andrew Brammer had an issue there, and that will be sure to take that back in just a few moments' time, I believe. But Alex Smith, P3 in the standings, P3 in the race, 207 points to Alex Smith's name. Then we have John Baker on 123 points in the standings. He's currently P5, but P4 in this race. Then we have Barry Clayton in P4 in the standings. We did a bit of a flip there on 188 points, and he is currently in P10 in this race. A bit of a weekend to forget for him in the end. Then we have Andrew Brammer on 109 points. He'll be hoping to take away a couple more in this race. Currently P7 in the race. Then we have, in terms of pro runners, that rounds out the pro runners for this field. Then in the AM running, we have Rob Whitney on 277 points. Didn't score in race 1. That gap between him and Paul Milman closing up, but he will be taking home some points from this race. Then we have Paul Milman, who overtakes Paul Brady for P2 in the standings, currently P1 in this race. Another fantastic effort from him in this race so far. Could see him closing up to Rob Whitney. Then we have Guy Swarbrick, who is on 182 points at the moment. He is sorry, we're going back. It's a bit of a weird way, but it's Paul Milman P2 in the AM running. Then we have Paul Brady P3 in the AM running on 213 points. A very close battle going on between them. As it stands, that is going to be increasing that gap, but never know what could happen later on in the race. Then we have Guy Swarbrick on P4 in P4 on the AM running, 182 points, making contact with Steve Knight at the moment. Steve Knight lapped traffic this time round, allows him to unlap himself. Very courteous indeed, Guy. He's got P4 on 182 points and P2 in the AM running in this race. Then we have Steve Knight, who is on 102 points in the AM running. So, still places swapping about in the championship standings this late on into the championship. Goes to show it should be going on till quite late on, I would say. Interesting to note, actually, that the leader of the AM championship has actually taken away more points than the leader of the Pro Championship. Goes to show that the Pro runners have been just stealing points from each other the entire season. That stands to reason. Has been a fantastic season's worth of racing. And as I say, the Championship standings will certainly not be concrete until very late on, I would say. As we go on board with Rob Whitney, he's doing his best to keep Andrew Brammer, or keep up with Andrew Brammer, because that'll help him in his fight against Paul Brady. Speaking of his fight against someone, Alan Matthews is possibly conceding defeat in his fight against Will Inglis. Is now 2.5 seconds behind with 8 minutes to go in this race, and Will Inglis looking very in control of this race as things stand. He might have to watch out, Alan Matthews, for Alex Smith. Alex Smith, once again, not posting a single legal lap so far, whether that is his own fault or it is the fault of the game. For whatever reason, Alex Smith currently being a very naughty boy, according to the timing system. I can tell you it's a 1:23.0 on that previous lap in comparison to Alan Matthews' 1:23.6. So we could see a battle for P2 on the podium. There is Alan Matthews just in the line of sight for Alex Smith, so that'll be spurring him on. Alex Smith will be trying his best to catch up then as he uses that push-to-pass system heading down towards turn 1. Will be a very good battle, potentially building up between P2 and P3 in this race. As we see, Andrew Rammer getting past Rob Whitney once again. Not sure what went on there. Rob Whitney actually not looking entirely clear of Paul Brady at this point in the race, I would say. So we could see a battle between those in just a few moments' time. John Baker currently P4, Paul Millman leading that AM race in P5. So we've got a bit of a more mixed field spread in this race, but it's certainly given us a bit of an interesting dimension to some parts of this race in terms of, well, specifically I'd say the championship, just how some drivers are going to be closing up to each other. I mean, the likes of Alex Smith, he'd really want to get this overtake done because it will close up that gap to Will Inglis as much as possible. And of course, anything he can do, I'm sure anything he can do to try and take away as many points as possible from Alan Matthews will be appreciated by Will Inglis as well, because they are within 30 points of each other now with 3 rounds to go. In fact, yeah, 3 rounds to go. So, not an insurmountable feat is that, and it will be very interesting indeed. We'll be going into the final part of this championship without knowing, really, without knowing who will be coming out on top. So place your bets, folks, as we see Alex Smith heading around the final corner, doing his best to try and keep up with Alan Matthews. Once again, Alan Matthews just a little bit quicker than Alex Smith on this previous lap, unfortunately for Alex. As we go on board with Rob Whitney, he's very much potentially falling into the grasp of Paul Brady here. We're going to compare their pace at the moment. We've just got over 5 minutes to go in this race, and I can tell you that on the previous lap, it's a 1:26.4 for Paul Brady and 1:26.9 for Rob Whitney. The best laps are 1:26.6 for Rob Whitney and a 1:26.0 on that previous lap for Paul Brady. So Paul Brady certainly catching up. In fact, they're side by side here. The camera just about missed that then. Paul Brady gets the overtake as we head down towards turn 1. Who's going to be later on the brakes then? Rob Whitney really needs to be quite brave into this corner, and he certainly has been. Heading down towards turn 2, he's got back past Paul Brady for now, but how long can he keep him at bay? Of course, Paul Brady, oh so close, had the advantage of that slipstream as well. He's going to be putting the pressure on and putting the pressure on hard at this stage in the race. Anything he can do to try and take away those points from Paul, try and close that gap to Paul Millman. Of course, Paul Millman, much like Alan Matthews, would be, or much like Williams this, will be rather happy if the guy in P3 in the championship can take away points from the guy in P1, and that is what's going to be happening here. There's contact between Paul Brady and Rob Whitney. Paul Brady suffers a bit of front wing damage as a result, and it is Paul Brady out in front. However, I'm sure that's what he cares about most of all at this point in time. The gap building up ever so slightly, but I am sure it is going to this battle is going to carry on later into this race. We do, of course, not have that long left. as we see Alan Matthews currently 3 seconds behind Will Inglis. Will Inglis, how's his pace looking at the moment? His best lap is a 122.7, his previous lap a 123.5. He is a few tenths quicker than the likes of Alan Matthews, but I think he spent so long in the dirtier of the car in front trying to get past. He's never going to quite match his outright pace that he demonstrated in race 1, unfortunately for him, but still a mighty effort nonetheless. As we see Paul Brady, Rob Whitney still very much within reaching distance of each other. The gap standing at about a second as we head down towards, where are we heading down towards? We're heading down towards turn 1, of course. Just couldn't quite make out where we were briefly, but it's looking a little bit more signed, sealed and delivered on this lap than it did on the previous one. So the gap stands at about 0.8 of a second between these two, but I'm sure that is going to, rather like an accordion, expand and contract and expand and contract as the final few laps of this race take place. These two are the closest cars on track. And just to reiterate, it is Will Inglis who leads the race at the moment. We're doing a very nice job in P1, about 3 seconds clear of Alan Matthews in P2, who's built up a substantial, or not substantial, but has built up a more secure gap to Alex Smith, the car, in P3. Unfortunately for Alex, we thought maybe there's going to be a bit of a charge for P2 mid-race. I don't think that was to be, unfortunately. His pace just wasn't quite there, but he's still putting in a very nice effort, keeping pace, in fact, matching Alan Matthews' car up in front. So don't count anything out just yet. As we see Alex Smith rounding out the podium. Then we have John Baker in P4, Paul Millman in P5, Guy Swarbrick P6, Andrew Brammer P7, Paul Brady P8, Rob Whitney P9, Barry Clayton P10. Unfortunately for him, this race not going his way. How's his pace looking at the moment, actually? Previous lap, a 124.0. That's his best lap as well. So he's a little bit quicker than the cars around him. May still get a couple of on-track overtakes for our viewing pleasure if things go his way. Not entirely sure of that, though. Currently running in P10, and we have Steve Knight running P11. So as I say, a little bit of more of a mixed field spread in race 2, but certainly interesting nonetheless. We see Alan Matthews setting his car up there over the curb, trying to get the best entry into turn 1 so we can carry as much speed as possible and make it effectively more of a straight line, I presume, is his idea behind that one. Try and ride over those curbs and catapult yourself towards the second long straight heading down towards the end of sector 1 there. He's bounced over a curb there, the back end gets away from me, dives onto the grass a little bit, but is able to collect it. That's the type of small mistake that I think Alex Smith will be praying for if he wants to come away with a P2 in this race. Closest cars on track at the moment are actually Andrew Brammer and Paul Brady. Andrew Brammer, how's his pace looking at the moment? It is a 127.1 on the previous lap for Andrew Brammer, a 126.2 for Paul Brady. Paul Brady really into his stride this weekend, it must be said. He's done a fantastic job. It goes to show why he's running P3 in the AM Championship. He's keeping Rob Whitney at bay, and in fact starting to put the pressure on Andrew Brammer. Although I say keeping Rob Whitney at bay, he has just posted a 125.7 in comparison to Rob Whitney's 125.4. So Rob Whitney certainly trying his best to get that all-important, what would it be? It'll be P2 in the AM running, P3 in the AM running, in fact. We haven't looked at him too much, actually, but Guy Swarbrick has has driven a very quiet but very competent race here at Mexico. He's run it in P2 for quite some time. He's had no major challenges, doing a very impressive job here, Guy, as you are currently running P2 in this race, closing up towards the likes of Paul Brady and Paul Millman as we enter the later stages of this championship. Fantastic drive for Guy Swarbrick. He's in the low 127s at the moment, so he's on pace with a couple of other cars on track. The timer is only at 20 seconds. Now, where are we in terms of our race leader? I can tell you our race leader is just heading through Sector 2 now, so this is the penultimate lap of this race. So in just a few moments we'll be settling in and enjoying a final lap with Will Inglis. But we're enjoying, actually, a battle between Andrew Brammer and Paul Brady here. As Paul Brady, apologies there, Paul, commentator's curse in full effect once again, complimenting you on what has been a fantastic drive. No major issues for you there, and you lose the important battle against Rob Whitney. Rob Whitney takes that position back, now a few seconds up the road in P3 once again. Both drivers there on the push to pass system as we go on board with Willing Bliss. Just about didn't make the checkered flag, unfortunately. So is now starting the final lap of this race. Under pressure potentially from Alan Matthews. Alan Matthews looking a little bit faster on that previous lap. The gap standing at about 2.3 seconds. Could something happen on the final lap? We'll have to stay tuned in to find out then. 2 seconds now, the gap, as Paul Brady allows some other cars to head past. What a shame for Paul. That I think is absolutely devastating. Really won't reflect on what a fantastic race he has had. Just goes to show Robert rewarded with his patience there and good racecraft. He's been motored back up to a podium position, as we see Willing Bliss heading through the end of Sector 1 now. Still, Matthews keeping him company. It's not as close as Alan would like to be, rather. And Rema and Robert now standing at about 0.6 of a second apart. The Amber runners seem to be on a bit of a charge in the later stages of this race. Paul Millman has got quite near to his all-time or his overall best lap. Guy Swarbrick, once again, in low 127, close to his best lap. Then we have Rob Whitney, not quite at his best, but certainly keeping up with the cars around him, that is for sure. And then we have Paul Brady as well in the 125s on the quick laps. So, very interesting indeed for the AM runners at this stage, but we are on board with Willing Bliss as he heads through Sector 3 for the final time this weekend. It is a double victory for Willing Bliss. Congratulations, Will, well deserved there. Fantastic weekend all round for you. That is closing up the championship fight there. Alan Matthews comes home P2 and Alex Smith rounding out the podium in quick succession there. That is a fantastic effort from the three championship leaders. As we see them coming across the line in very quick succession, as I said. They were, I'm sure, if we had a few more laps, and I wish we did, we're getting ready for a bit of a battle, as I'm sure we're going to see some victory donuts now. I can't wait to see them. In fact, we're going to go on board briefly. We're going to try and join John Baker as quickly as possible. Let's enjoy some victory donuts from Willing Bliss, from Alan Matthews, from Alex Smith. Some well-earned victory donuts then. Enjoy the calories as we see John Baker heading on to the start-finish straight once again to come home P4. Another fantastic race for him, the second P4 of the weekend. And once again, Paul Millman in P5 takes the race victory. Congratulations, Paul, for a fantastic effort here, closing up the gap in the championship standings. Victory donuts then. We have no rear tyres left, but we're also watching Guy Swarbrick coming home P2 in the AM running as things stand. There's only a couple more corners to separate him and a spot on that AM podium. As we see Guy Swarbrick coming home to take P2 in the AM running. Fantastic effort from him. Then we have Andrew Brammer coming home P7 on the road, Barry Clayton P8, and then Rob Whitney coming home P3 in the AM running. Let's watch some victory donuts. John Baker taking part in them as well. Will we see Guy Swarbrick taking part? Let's see as he heads down towards turn 1. I think he will be. And we have maybe just a bit of a parade for Guy Swarbrick actually. No, there we go. There we have Rob Whitney coming home P9, Steve Knight P11. Right, victory donuts then. What do we have? We have some victory understeer from Guy Swarbrick. Well, hey! Is Willing Bliss just sat on the throttle there? I think Willing Bliss is just sat on the throttle. That is very impressive indeed. I commend your commitment to the donuts, sir. They're not looking entirely spectacular, but I commend all the drivers' commitments, not only to the victory donuts, but to this race weekend as well. It has been a fantastic race weekend here at Mexico, as this championship is beginning to draw to an unfortunate close, I think. It has been a fantastic race weekend. I hope you've enjoyed watching as much as I have enjoyed commentating, and we'll catch you in just a fortnight's time for the next Formula Alpha race. Thank you very much.